Hi everyone, it's Kamau. Welcome back to my channel. Now, do you feel like you live dangerously? Or do you feel like you're living a charmed life, like no matter how you push yourself to the edge and you just do some dangerous things or just some crazy things and you just come out whole or in one piece? Sometimes I feel that way. It's not that I go out of my way to live dangerously, but even when I was very young, I would just do things because I've always been just so fearless. I don't live in fear, and I just do pretty much whatever I feel like doing. Taking some precaution, yes, and as I grow older, more and more precaution, of course. But I'm looking back. Sometimes I say, I've always felt like I've been shielded. I don't know by what, by whom, but I've always felt like I was being preserved in some way, reserved for greater things. And I'm going to share with you some instances that have convinced me that, I was being protected. Like I said, not sure by whom or by what. Now, from I was little, I've always had this adventurous nature. Not to go out and do anything freaky, but just always wanted to ask people things and to find things out and to just go wherever I felt the information was or the experience was that I was seeking. I would just go. And these are not in any particular order, but the first one I'll share was when, as a young woman, I just left school and I started working. I was working at a bank, and they had their sports club, and we had access to, the swimming pool and the tennis courts and whatever. So I decided that I wanted to use the pool, but I decided to do that in the mornings before work. Now, what happened was I would get to my work very early, maybe 6 o'clock in the morning, because I would have to leave my home that early to get a bus to go over before the traffic, right? To beat the traffic, so I would be in that vicinity where the workplace and the sports club was 6 o'clock or 6:30, and work would begin, I think, 8:30 or 9 thereabouts. I can't remember. So I decided that that's when I would do my swimming, and I would be the only one in the facility. The security guard would be around the front, right, to let me in, but I was the only one in the whole facility, the only one in this huge swimming pool. So early in the morning was frigid, but I didn't care, right? I just decided I wanted to swim in the early mornings, maybe for an hour. And looking back, I'm saying, that was a dangerous thing to do because anything could have happened. I could have been attacked. Someone could have, lay waited me in the facility, even though the guard was way around the front. Just studied my movements and lay waited me, as well as to be in that huge swimming pool all by myself. What if I'd gotten into difficulty? So some of the things were done, looking back, I would say out of naivety, but I would say for the most part, I would just had this fearlessness, just this reassurance that everything would be fine, I would not get hurt. And I just went through, and I did that for months, 6 o'clock in the morning in this swimming pool, swimming all by myself. The other situation, when I was in high school, I had this urge to know things, to find out things. So I would, and at this particular time, I was very deep into my Afrocentricity. And at that time, to me, the nearest link to that was Rastafari. So I would go around interviewing Rastafari. Wherever I saw them, I would stop them. I would sometimes go into For example, if I went to a particular place, they were there, I would go into the building. I didn't care who it was, I didn't care what, you know, it was just all about getting knowledge, getting information about the religion to see if that's where I belonged. Later, discovered, or very quickly discovered, it wasn't where I belonged, but at the time that was a link, that was a connection, the closest connection I saw to Africa. And looking back, I would say to myself, anything could have happened to me. I could have been raped, I could have been, anything could have happened, because these were mainly men for whatever reason. And sometimes I was alone with this stranger in their yard, in their office, wherever it was, and just reasoning, just talking, just trying to get information, and no concern, no concern for, you know, what could happen. Another thing was close to that time too, when they searching my African identity and so on, and the person I was with at the time, you know, he used to ride a bicycle, and he lived downtown in some area close to the areas where these were inner city areas, lots of gunshots all over the place. So what we would do when we're going home in the night, I'd be on his bicycle riding home in the wee hours, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the night, and you'd hear gunshots from time to time, you know, but you know that these were volatile communities. Anything could happen at any time, because sometimes he would actually show me bullet holes in the wall, stray bullets that came in and lodged themselves in the wall. These are communities where if the electricity went out, when it came back, you would hear a barrage of gunshots. This is the kind of community, right? And I was just there merrily being towed on the bicycle, just having no care, you know, feeling so safe. Again, anything could have happened, just looking back and thinking all the possibilities. But at the time, no concern to me. It's not that I didn't know, I just was so fearless. It did not daunt me at all, you know. Now, when I was a little girl, when I was about 10, because this was before I went to high school, so I must have been 9, 10. So I had this friend in all-age school, and she lived in Cooper's Hill. This was a couple miles further up the hill from where I lived. I lived in Red Hills, so she lived in Cooper's Hill. I would go to visit her sometimes. You know, I would tell my mother, I'm going to visit my friend. I don't think my mother really understood how far away my friend lived. And I would just walk, because the bus didn't go up Cooper's Hill is a place where you have to have your own transportation to get there, or you have to walk. So I would take the bus to the point where, you know, the intersection, and I would walk. Now, this is a very bushy area, the winding road up into the hills, bush on both sides, and it would just be me walking up. And when you get to a certain point where you have the houses, you know, you had these huge Alsatian dogs, Doberman dogs, likely to come out because sometimes the gates weren't closed. And I walked through and went at 9 or 10 years old. My mother did not know fully the danger, because I guess she figured my friend lived closer than what really was the case. And I was just so happily walking through the winding road, you know, up the hills, looking at the birds, looking at the beautiful houses, having no care in the world. And now when I look back at all the possibilities, all the things that could have happened, you know, because we would hear stories of things happening to other children or other folks being captured, kidnapped, you know, raped, murdered. We all know what's possible. And there I was, there I was. When I started having my children, in the night, I had this habit of taking them outside in the wee hours of night, because we had a swing in the backyard, and I would take them out there and we just swing, and it didn't concern me that, this is not the safest thing to do. I just enjoyed being in the night air, just swinging with them, and it's something that I did habitually. Again, looking back, I probably would not do that now, but I was just so free-spirited, just so in tune with nature, and wanted my children to experience that. So in the very early mornings, I would take them out, take them for long walks, get in fresh air. Similarly, at night, we'd be out there. Everybody else gone inside, we'd be out there just enjoying the night air, enjoying the coolness, the stars. I love that kind of thing. And I'm actually happy they were able to experience that. It's just that the times that we live in are not conducive to that kind of thing. And it's just so sad. It's really sad. Now, another thing, when I was growing up, the bus that I had to take, the number 33 bus, anybody who took that bus was living dangerously. Because that bus, there were just a few of them to begin with. So when it came, you had to get on. So it was always crowded. And you would have people hanging from the doors, hanging from the windows, standing behind the driver. And for us going to school, sometimes that's how we traveled. We were literally on the door, on the step, hanging from the bus. I remember one evening we were coming from school, and my friend, my schoolmate, she was on the step and the bus was going around the corner, and she almost fell out. Somebody had to hold her by her waist, the waist of her skirt, to pull her back into the bus. But that's how we got to school, and that's how we got back home. Many times we were on the steps of the bus. At one point too, I think one of those buses, because where we lived, there were a lot of precipices. It's up the hill. So not just the fact that you're hanging from the bus, but just going down the hill, and all those precipices and those steep corners, that we had a dangerous commute, a very dangerous commute. And on one occasion, one of the buses actually went over the precipice and several persons died. So anybody who lived in Red Hills, who took the number 33 bus, power to you. Power to you. Power to myself for surviving that. No, I was always following my friend when we were in sixth form, and I did another video about this too. Always going with her to the country when we should be at school. She always had somewhere to go and always wanted me to follow her. So this one time she was going to I don't remember where, but we ended up deciding that we were going to go through the JDF, the Jamaica Defense Force compound. This is the soldiers, right? Where they train the soldiers. We went onto the compound, and we were going up into areas where we weren't supposed to be, because she said that's a shortcut. And so I followed her until some dogs started chasing her. These are highly trained dogs belonging to the JDF, and we had to run like crazy. So always following this bestie of mine could have gotten me into so much trouble, and looking back, now I'm saying, why did I follow this child to all these places? Another thing, I was a part of a group that we call the Lodge, and we used to meet at a particular place and get into these serious arguments with persons who we felt just weren't seeing things the way they should, on religious grounds, on political grounds. So we would get into some heated arguments, and I would never do that now. And looking back, I'm saying we could have been arrested, we could have, because the arguments got so heated and threatening sometimes, anything could have happened. And when it was over, typically 9-10 o'clock, I'd be the only one going home, and I lived miles away, so I'd been taking my bus to go home. All of this was really, I was like 19 at the time, really dangerous living. Again, when I started publishing my books, the first 2 books that I published, self-published, I would go around, I'd walk from house to house, hundreds of houses, trying to sell my books. All kinds of strangers, all kinds of possibilities, exposing myself to, but I was just so driven and wanting to succeed, wanting to sell my books. I just went from house to house all over the communities, and I was so terrified of dogs, but I didn't allow that to stop me. I just went, did what I had to do, and that's how I sold my first set of books that I published. So finally, I went through this phase where, I love walking barefooted, but I went through this phase where I was actually going barefooted even when I had to go out, like to go to the supermarket or to go a couple miles away. I would just walk barefooted on the asphalt, on the marl, on the whatever, the dirt, the sand, wherever. And I just didn't care who would see me or who would say anything, because for me this was just getting in touch with nature. There's a hill close to my home, in Brayton, where people usually hike, and I would hike that up barefooted and back, and my feet took the brunt of it, but it just felt so good to me to be walking barefooted, getting in touch with nature, and did not care at all what anybody thought. So, I remember I had a friend, he passed on about 6 years ago, but he was a dear friend to me. I met him from I was in high school, and he was one of the Rastafarian men who I actually met on my search. And I would always go to his workplace and we would talk. And I remember he said to me, "You are clearly being led. You are clearly being guided." And that's something that from then I took to heart. And I strongly believe that now that I was being led and still am being led, still am being guided and protected. Not sure by whom or what, but definitely having that strong sense of being preserved for greater and greater things. Thanks for joining me today and sharing those stories. And let me know about you. How do you live? Do you live dangerously, or are you tame? Are you cautious? Are you one of those persons who take extra precaution? Let me know in the comments. Please like, share, and as usual, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so.